a Trent Reznor project.
Yep.
With his erstwhile collaborator, Atticus Ross, somebody, the bloke who I can't remember the name of, and Mrs. Trent Reznor, whose name is Mary Queen Mandique. Mandique.
That's it.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Now, this, I think the problems with this album and the strong points of this album are both kind of the same thing, which is it sounds too much like Nin, and too much like Nin outtakes. The soundtrack that's outtakes. So thinking, we've got a couple of tracks left, and the soundtracks that wouldn't fit on. Let's just throw them on here. Let's get my wife to kind of warble a bit over the top of them, and it's
harsh.
Yeah, and lots of. I would describe this album to someone that hasn't heard any of the music as plink plonk kaplunk, blip blop kaplunk. And it sounds brilliant, as in the sound, very clean. As Almonda produced it, I think.
Yeah.
So the actual sound itself is very, very crisp, perfect sounding. But like I said, for me, there's some great tracks on it, and even examples of what I'm just complaining about are things like the loop closes near the end of the album, which is a perfect example of the soundtrack reject kind of thing that I'm
very much so.
about.
That particular track,
and even the track before it, recursive self-improvement, similar kind of thing. And then you've got things that are slightly more ninny, if you like, near the start, and at times it kind of threatens to be really interesting. So on tracks like Ice Age, which is a more kind of acoustic-y kind of track, which actually reminded me a lot of the album we reviewed last year by the SoundClouder people, Sandman's Orchestra.
Oh yeah,
had that kind of thing about it. And then
was that last year?
Yeah. And then I think it was last year.
Yes.
And then it might have been the year before actually. I think they've got a new album coming out, so it might have been the year before. And also in the middle of the album you have Too Late, All Gone, and How Long. And How Long, which is the current single, is very kind of Depeche Mode-y.
Yeah.
But also much poppier and showcases her better. And I would have actually preferred to have an album that was more kind of distinctly non-Nin soundtracky thing, but with her her singing and trying to go in a slightly different direction, and that track does that a bit. Like I thought, whilst this is poppier, an actual album full of stuff that was leaning more this way, I'd have actually found more interesting.
It's quite mainstream. It's interesting. That was the lead single. If you exclude the EP that came out at the tail end of last year, which I think all of which is included here as well.
Yes.
It's. I thought the opening of the album was quite strong. It's very, very Nin, the wake up, that sort of brief sort of collection of noise and distortion at the start, which goes into Keep It Together, which was the lead off the Omen EP from tail end of last year. And then, you're right, it does start to meander a little bit. I'm a big Nin fan, so there's probably elements of this I really enjoyed that perhaps you didn't, for some of the reasons you've just described, in that I thought when it was sounded like Nin, it was playing to the strengths. And actually, when you compare this collection of tracks, 13, 14 tracks, to the EP that came back in 2010, which is now 3 years ago. This is a lot stronger, and it's almost they have crafted.
I would certainly agree with that, because that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So and for those of you who purchase this via iTunes or stream it on Spotify, it's actually included at the end as well, which sort of doubles the length of the album.
Yeah. As if the 65 minutes wasn't long enough already.
You can have that. You can have the whole hour and a half. So I agree with some of what you say. Where I found it plays to its strengths is when you hear the both of them. as well. I actually don't mind hearing Trent Reznor. It actually feels like we've not heard him for quite a long time because of the soundtrack work, because of the Ghosts work that he did before that. As I exclude the last album that they did there as well. So it's nice to hear him as well. I think it was it We Fade Away, where there was a very early Nin effect on the vocals with her sort of screaming but whispering, which I quite like. There's a little nod to Nin there, which I quite enjoyed.
It's also hard not to start singing Fade to Grey at part of the time in that song as well.
Quite. So, and I agree with you. The end of the album you do start to lose interest because it does seem to just go on and on and on in the manner of some of the weaker points of the recent soundtrack.
Yes, most of the tracks are over 6 minutes long, people.
Yes. So you need a sturdy constitution and probably will appeal more to existing fans rather than new believers. However, I enjoyed it. I think it warrants another couple of listeners at least. Like you said at the start, I probably spent too much time listening to David Bowie this month, and then I should have done. So it's a good album. It's certainly not a solid album. It does feel like a collection of things thrown together, and that's the other weakness in it because I've already heard the Omen EP, for example, which is about 6 tracks on here. Yeah. Because we've already heard the single. The other bits that slotted in between it starts to feel like, well, there's a few stronger tracks there, there's a bit of filler, there's a few more strong tracks there. So it doesn't have that cohesion.
Good word.
Thank you.